Morning, guys. I'm going to be running a few security missions here on one of my alts that I'm training up, so I figured I'd throw a little quick video together and show you a few things. This alt I'm actually training up to be part of the recon group. I think I mentioned in one of the threads that I posted. So I'm trying to, ultimately, they're going to need to fly fast ships, and more importantly, not just in terms of speed, but alignment, so they can very quickly get in and out of sticky situations. More times than not, you're going to use stealth, and in some cases, probes. Usually, the ship of choice is going to either be an interceptor or a covert ops ship. Interceptors, again, very fast, align. And warp very fast, and have some innate abilities usually to protect them from being pointed or scrambled. And that's when someone's using either a warp disruptor or a warp scrambler, or being put in a bubble to disable your warp engine capabilities. That's used when you're doing a gate camp or when you engage in a fight, what's called tackle. You basically disable the opponent's ability to be able to escape quickly. So you can't warp away, you can't use your micro warp drive. So this ship I originally started to fit out that way. And again, if you go to your fittings window, it's Alt F when you're docked up. This is the Republic Firetail. It's just a Minmatar frigate. It is a faction frigate though, so it's a little better than your standard frigate. Um, I have autocannons fit up, which are your projectile-based weapon. Medium range, the optimal range is right about 6,500, so that is within scram and web range. And I also have a rocket launcher attached. I may switch this out to a probe launcher when I'm doing recon missions because weapons become less important. But again, since I'm running missions, that's why some of these are fit. This is what you call a dual prop fit. So I have both a micro warp drive and an afterburner fit. The reason you might want to do that is they each serve different functions and are useful in different scenarios. Obviously, the micro warp drive is going to give you more speed, but the downside of it is it has a much worse effect on your signature radius. So if you're using a micro warp drive in combat, people are going to be doing more damage to you. So in situations like that, it's better to use an afterburner. You don't get quite as much velocity increase out of it, but it's not going to have as big an impact on your signature radius, so that you can use them in combat to help you maintain your positioning better and offset any speed negation like web or any other thing that might be going on. The other thing that a microwarp drive can be useful for, there's what's called the microwarp drive trick. And it's basically more applies to covert op ships, but it's basically you're going to pulse the microwarp drive and then activate your cloak after you already aligned. And basically, you only briefly appear, and if you time it right, nobody's going to be able to take advantage of that, and you can almost insta-warp while cloaked in a covert op ship. The other thing, if you time it correctly when someone's pointing you, um, the point will disable the micro warp drive. So if you pulse that and warp away, sometimes you can still escape even though you're being tackled, depending on, there's a lot of factors involved there. So then I also have a warp scrambler. So again, if I'm going to tackle somebody, that's what I'm going to use. I'm actually probably going to swap this out since we're going to run a PvE mission. You never need to scramble in a PvE mission, so I'm going to probably put a webifier here instead. But again, what this is going to do, it's going to disable the warp drive capabilities. The difference between a disruptor and a scrambler is the number of points, quote unquote, warp points that it puts on. So 1 point is good enough to disable one level of warp capability. Now, if you're fitting to offset with what's called a warp core stabilizer, that will offset somebody trying to disable you, that will reduce a certain amount of points. So it's kind of the points game. If you can put more points on than someone is mitigating against, then you're going to be able to disable them. So the disruptor only has 1 point, but it has a much longer range. So a lot of times, tackles will take advantage of being able to hit you at a longer range. The scrambler puts 2 points on you, but it typically has a little bit of a shorter range. But you're pretty much going to ensure that even if they have a warp core stabilizer or they have, let's say, a micro warp drive that's pulsed, you're still going to disable them and they're not going to be able to get away. Then I have a shield extender. This is basically going to increase the size of the shields on this particular ship. Um, and that's it for the medium modules. You notice all the ships, I think I covered in the other one, the ship statistics are all over here on the right. I've got the capacitor, the offense. It's going to show you the DPS that I'm currently at, both in terms of gunnery and missiles. And then here's your defense. Remember I was telling you, you can tell if you're typically going to be shield tank or armor tank based on that. Well, this is a Minmatar ship, so it is a shield tank. You can see 1,200 shield points. And then you get down into the individual resistances. Now, some people may recommend modding the ship to cover some of the weaknesses. You can see at the shield level there's no EM resistance innately, so that's a weakness of the ship. So someone that might be fighting against me might be using, let's say Mjolnir missiles or EMP ammo that's going to do more EM damage, and it's going to hit my shields harder in this case. So there are modules or things that you can do to kind of offset that. So I do have 2 available rig slots here. I could rig out with an EM protector screen or something that's going to boost that innate weakness. Low slots here, again, I was going for trying to be able to align and warp quicker. That gets into your navigation section here. An interceptor, typically you're going to shoot for less than 2. I'm down to 3, which isn't bad for a frig. But some of these modules are going to complement that. You have the nanofiber internal structure. It makes your ship lighter, and it'll align and warp faster. You also have the gyro stabilizer, which is designed to increase the damage of my projectile weapons, and inertial stabilizers, which also help with your align and warp speed. So that was a lot of talking. Let's go blow some stuff up. I wanted to show you the agent finders if you haven't figured that out. Over here on the right, whenever you're docked, you'll have the agent finder. And if there's agents available on this particular station, they will show here. I'm currently running a security mission. If you want to find agents, you can use this little button here, the agent finder. And that'll bring up a search window. Across the top here, you can set the agent level. That's the level of the particular missions that you're going to running. Again, as a noob, you're only going to start out with level 1. They get progressively harder, and you're going to want to fly higher level ships like cruisers, battleships, as you progress up to level 4, which is pretty much your battleships. Level 5 and beyond, there are actually level 6 missions in some case, but level 5 missions are always going to be either in low security space or null security space. So you're going to have the PvP aspect of that too. But you've got a bunch of parameters here that you can use to narrow down the search. You can pick the particular faction that you're looking for. If you don't care, you just don't set that. So if I was looking for Minmatar Republic agents or a particular faction that I wanted to build on, I could do it that way. If you wanted to look for a particular corporation that was offering missions, you could select that way. The key one here that you're probably going to use is the agent type. There are different types of missions that kind of build you into different areas. You have distribution, which is typically going to be using freighter ships to deliver things and basically do your courier contracts, basically learn to do that. But you're going to make money in the process, and you're going to make faction or reputation with whatever faction you happen to be working with. Factional warfare has to do if you want to get into the faction or empire space PvP, so Minmatar versus Amara, that kind of thing. There is a whole group of people that do the factional warfare stuff. Those agents you can find that way. Mining, if mining is your thing, you can find agents that will give you missions that revolve around mining ores. R&D if you want to build stuff. Storyline are almost like your epic quest in traditional. They're only going to pop up at certain times, but they will continue your Eve storyline, and you get a lot of rep and money for those. But the most common one is going to be security. So I'll usually set it for security, and then it'll list all the agents nearby, sorted by the number of jumps from you that are available to run missions from. And if you want to go to one of them, you'll notice that the star system or station that they're in is at the bottom of the information. You can simply right-click on them and go set destination, and that will set your travel path to that particular agent's station, so that when you're traveling, the individual gates and stations will light up yellow in your overview, so you know where to jump if you haven't used that before. And it'll tell you how many jumps away it is. In this case, I'm already at the station, and I've actually already accepted the mission, which is a combat mission. Again, You're going to right-click the guy and go start conversation. You can accept the mission. In this case, the details are here. It'll tell you what system the mission takes place in, if there are any restrictions around what kind of ships you need to take into it. It gives you the rewards for completing the mission and how much time you have to get the mission bonus. So there'll be a certain amount of time that you have to actually complete the mission, and you'll get a bonus. Usually it's ISK or items on top of what you get for the mission anyway. If it takes you too long and you go past that time, then you're only going to get the base reward for the mission. So there you go. A lot of talking, so let's blow some stuff up now. I'm going to go ahead and undock. Oh, wait. Actually, I want to fit my webifier because I'm not using my scram. So let's go back and do that. Open my fittings window. I'm going to unfit my warp scrambler. And I already have webifier in my inventory, so I can just drag and drop it here, and it'll fit my webifier for me. All right. So let's go ahead and undock. Now, in some cases, you're going to have to jump or travel to the system. It just so happens this mission occurs in the same system that I'm already in. But once you're in the system where the mission is, you basically right-click to an empty part of space, and you'll see the section here for agent missions. And I see my mission there. So if I follow the menu out to encounter, I'll get the warp to location option. So I'm going to go ahead and warp to the mission pocket location. Now, a lot of missions, the first spot that you warp to is only going to be kind of like a little waiting room that takes you into the actual fighting or the next stage of it. In some cases, you're even going to have missions that have multiple stages. But what I wanted to point out here is you're going to get this thing called an acceleration gate. And it's kind of like a warp gate. Instead of warping you to another system, it's going to warp you to the next pocket of the mission. And if you highlight or radio click the thing to bring up which is basically hold down your left click button, you'll get a number of options. One of them is activate gate, which will then warp you to the next pocket for the mission. And I see we can see some bad guys here on the periphery of my range. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys here. So they're not quite within target lock range yet, so I'm probably going to start out by using my micro warp drive to close the gap here. My particular guns, and if you float over your guns, it will give you your optimal range for damage. Missiles, it usually doesn't matter. But for projectile weapons, hybrid turrets, anything like that, you're going to have this particular range that you're optimal. In this case, 6,500. Now, when you have an item or an enemy highlighted, you'll get this selected item bar here. And this is where you get your keep at range, your orbit. You see my orbit is set to 6,500. If you right-click this, you get the option to set what you want the default to be. You're typically going to set that so that it's within your weapon's optimal range. So a good thing these guys aren't too powerful, but I'm getting pounded on here a little bit. I like to sort by distance so I can tell which ones are closest. Again, just click the column. And then you can just click right here in your targets, and when I click the orbit button, it's automatically going to orbit at 6,500 kilometers, which is my optimal range. And I'm getting pounded on, so I'm going to stop talking and start fighting. Again, so I target the ship that I want, I activate my weapons modules, I activate my web. I'm going to turn off my micro warp drive because that's making my signature radius bigger, and I'm going to switch to afterburners. All right, I blew one of them up, so I'm switching targets now. be able to target another. If you train your targeting skill in advanced targeting, you can typically get, or your target management, I think is the skill. You can get more targets. Right now, 4 is my maximum. Sometimes it depends on the capabilities of your ship too, as to how many targets you can have locked at any given time. Right. The web module basically slows their ship down so that they can't uh, get a high angular velocity on you. Because remember, your ship, the guns that have to track, one of the factors in how well you're going to be able to hit them and how much damage you're going to do is what their angular velocity is in relation to you. So that kind of reduces their ability to get away from you and can also reduce the speed of their angular velocity, which increases your damage and likelihood of hitting them. So. The thing you have to watch out for in PvP, uh, if someone's trying to warp away and they're not pointed and you web them, it reduces their maximum velocity and it also changes the formula for the velocity that they have to reach to be able to enter warp. So basically, you can actually help your enemy escape by hitting them with a web. So you have to be careful in PvP when you're webbing somebody that you have to know that they're tackled and not trying to get away, or you might actually end up helping the enemy. Uh, in this case, we're fighting PvE enemies, so it doesn't really matter, but just something to be aware of. There's a couple guys really far away. I like looking at the enemy sometimes. If you click the little eyeball button, you can zoom in and look at whatever you have targeted. Alright, these guys are a little far away, so I'm actually going to switch back to micro warp drive to close the distance here just for a little bit. Alright, we'll switch back to afterburners here. All right, looks like we've got all the enemies in this pocket. And you'll notice there's another acceleration gate here. So we're going to go ahead and approach this other gate, which should take us to the next pocket of the mission. If you're ever unsure about what your status of the mission is, you can go and click on the journal here, which is also Alt-J, and that'll show you the current missions that you have here on the Agents tab. If I right-click it and go read, I can see I don't have the objective completed yet. And sometimes you can read through the details and find something that you might have missed. But you'll see once we actually do complete it, it'll say completed and it'll turn green. So we can see we have not yet completed this mission. So I'm going to go ahead and activate the gate. Once I get him within range, it will warp us to the next pocket. And here we go. Good stuff. Well, let's go ahead and close the distance here. We'll start out with micro warp drives, and if I start getting pounded, we'll switch back to afterburners once we've closed the distance. Oops, I accidentally targeted the wreck. A little extra money from selling their scraps. You can sometimes get good modules also that'll drop from them. I've taken about half my shields off here, actually starting to take some damage. They don't have me pointed though, so we can always warp off and regain some shield if we get in trouble. I don't think we're going to have to though. Goodbye. Still we got over here. Let's grab our loot first. Go ahead and reload all of our weapons while we got a little time before those other guys get here. Oh, they're closing in though. I'll go ahead and grab the loot here. And here they come. That's that. Now you can see if I go and read the details, you can see it turn green and it says objectives complete. So now we can go turn in or complete the mission by returning to the agent and go ahead and get our reward. And since I'm pretty sure we made the time objective, we should also get the bonus reward. And you can see we picked up a few little modules here that we can sell or reprocess or do whatever or reuse them. You'll always find stuff that you can do something with, even if it's just make a little extra ISK. So we'll go ahead and dock back up at the station where the agent's at and complete our mission. Now, in some of the higher level missions where you're really getting good loot, I'll also bring a salvage ship in afterwards to clean up all the wrecks. And you also can use what's called a salvager, which is basically a laser that will carve up what's left of the hull, and you'll get items that you can then use to either build other stuff or just sell for a little extra ISK. So you basically loot the wreck, pull all the modules out of it, and then you use the salvager beam to carve up what's left of the destroyed hull. All right, so I've landed here, so we can right-click and go start conversation with the agent, and you'll see we now have the complete mission option, and boom, we completed the mission. And we're ready to request another mission should we so choose. So that was it for this mission running video. Let me know what you think, and see you guys later.